So this video is going to be, so that's too fast, some alignment cues and modifications for some more of our commonly used postures. Alright, so first one is pigeon. We all know what pigeon is. So ideally you would have your front shin parallel-ish to the mat. Your back leg is directly behind you. So in this case, it's my left leg forward, my right leg is behind. The top of the back foot rests on the mat. Your foot is directly in line with your back leg. You want to try not to roll to the side, so we don't want to roll out of this to the left in this case because it's my left leg that's in front. Trying to bring the front of your right hip towards the floor. Now this is a tremendous stretch, as we know. So it doesn't have to be that that front leg is parallel to the top of the mat. You could have that leg anywhere from parallel, so parallel to the top, to the heel being back by the groin. It's okay. It's not, it doesn't matter. It'll be okay wherever that leg is. As we talked about earlier in modifications though, you can bring this block underneath that front hip, and Patty asked about this too. This is going to help you bring that shin more parallel to the top of the mat. The front foot is flexed-ish. I have it mostly flexed and then I just relax it. I don't keep it in a absolutely strenuously flexed position. Some other variations. So when someone is not, they cannot access that full pigeon, you can bring the back leg to the side of the body. Keep the top of the back foot against the mat. The front leg is still parallel-ish to the top of the mat, and they can come over the front leg. They do not have to come down into that reclined, and in yin and restorative, it's called sleeping swan, which sounds, fancier than pigeon, I suppose. So, how do I always keep forgetting my train of thought? Wherever I was going with that. You do not have to stay up tall. You can come down lower. You can bring your hands down to the mat. The chest can come down. Some other variations of pigeon is to have that front leg, the front leg is still here. They can lift up the back leg. So it's, you're just pulling the leg in towards the body. You can kind of hook it with your arm. You can take a bind. It can be behind, over here to the side. There's another one where it's an actual back bend. So all variations of pigeon. Obviously that's the most, progressive. You can also do pigeon, or not pigeon, but it's like a variation of pigeon, I guess. More of like a very intense dancer. So I'll talk about that one later. When you're standing up and you're doing that leg position. Pigeon is not an easy posture. It's quite uncomfortable for most people. So there's a couple ways you can cue getting into it. So if you're cueing from downward facing dog, the leg would lift. And as you exhale, start to bring the knee forward. We're going to bring the right knee behind the right wrist, right ankle behind left wrist, and extend the leg behind. You can also do it from a seated position. So in our restorative or yin class, we swing one leg around, lean to the side, take the back leg behind. So you don't have to swing into it. Most people do. To come out of it, if you're coming back to downward facing dog, you tuck the back toes under, start to lift the groin away, and then just bring the leg back. From a kneeling position, again, you're going to bring the knee forward, knee behind wrist, ankle behind opposite wrist. There is a form of double pigeon, also called fire log pose. So you have the bottom shin is parallel to the top of the mat. You stack the top leg on top. Ideally, it would be knee over ankle and ankle over knee. Do both sides, double pigeon, or fire log. So that's pigeon. Breathing is really key in pigeon because you want to try to get them to relax the other parts of the body that are not involved in that huge hip stretch. It is a gigantic hip flexor stretch, but I don't have to tell you that if you've practiced that at all, you know that it can be very intense. A baby version I like to take in my gentle yoga class is to extend. So in this case, I'm going to extend the right leg, cross the long leg over to the outside of a bent knee, and just take the leg off at an angle, the front leg. So in this case, it's my front, my left knee is in front, and now my left foot is near my right hip flexor, and that right leg is off at an angle. This seems to be pretty accessible for most people. Now I can end up bringing my leg all the way down to the floor, like my thigh, but it doesn't have to be. There can be people all the way up here where they are, you know, perched up on their heel, or their groin is resting on that bottom heel. You could still reach back. You could still reach back for the back leg for variations in that way. So that would just be some variations of pigeon pose. One of the questions I get often is, what is a staff pose? What does that look like? So sitting up tall, you want to create a 90-degree angle. Feet are flexed. Your feet can be together or hip distance apart. Beautiful posture here. The hands just come down beside the body. Now, if your hands don't touch the floor, you can lean back a little bit, but ideally you'd have your hands pressed into the mat. This is Dandasana or staff pose. Now, tight hamstrings will be a little bend in the knee, but you're pulling the pelvic floor up, your core is engaged, shoulders are pulled down, your hands are rigidly pressed against the mat, your heels are pressed into the mat, quads are soft so you're not hyperextending the legs. So sometimes people ask me about that staff pose. A lot of times when there is a tight hip flexor, tight lower back, they can't sit up straight, as I'm doing right now because I'm just tired. But sitting up nice and tall, you can sit on a block, and elevation will help to bring up that posture. So that's staff pose. Dolphin pose. While it is a variation, I think we talked about this, I don't know, I'll do it again. It is a variation or a modification to downward facing dog if you wanted to use it that way, but it's also a great shoulder stretcher. So on your forearms, the elbows are underneath the shoulders. You can clasp the hands together atop of, or you can press the palms of the hands into the mat. Clasping the hands together, I just said that, holy crap, woohoo! Tucking the toes under. You're gonna lift the knees away from the floor. Ears come between the biceps, but you don't want the crown of the head to come down to the mat. The feet can walk in towards the elbows. It's just like down dog. So your legs you're trying to lengthen out your legs, press the heels towards the floor. You want to try to keep shoulders under elbows. I know mine don't come all the way over a little bit. You just don't want to be over your hands. You could do some dolphin push-ups that way. Core is engaged, your pelvic floor is lifted. I feel like I can say that for pretty much every posture. It could be their heels are way up here. Maybe their legs are not long, they might be bent. Their knees might be bent. Most of the time, what I see is the head coming down. You're compressing the cervical vertebrae, you're pressing into the top of the head, which can be uncomfortable for some, especially if they've had traumatic brain injuries or they're prone to concussions. That will hurt, it'll give them a headache. So dolphin can be used in place of downward facing dog, but I love it as a great shoulder stretch, great hamstring stretch, gets all the way down from, you get from your Achilles all the way up into your glutes. You're pressing your elbows against the floor, you're pulling your head away from the mat. Now don't pull your head into pull your head and neck into your shoulders. You're pushing against the floor like you're actively trying to push the floor away from you. Another one that we're going to cover is boat pose or Navasana. Great core strengthening posture, but it also can be quite difficult for people who have issues with their tailbone. So if you're going to offer Navasana, I would encourage them to pad their tailbone with a blanket, a towel, maybe roll up the mat a little bit, use their shirt. But the back is nice and flat, shoulders pulled away, the core is engaged. You could just be here. You can even, a modification is to hold the knees so that your hands kind of tuck into the legs to hold you up. You can keep toes on the floor. I have to pad my tailbone. It could be bent knees. You could have your calves parallel to the floor, shins parallel to the ceiling. Your arms could be forward. It might be arms up, which is going to be a little more difficult. You could come up into that full seated V. It could be that you grab big toes and take it that way. The core is engaged the entire time to help with that balance. It could be a wider V, so I always call this boat, and then I come down and call this canoe. And back to boat. Some variations, if you want to help encourage that lower abdominal strength, is to pinch the knees against the block, keep squeezing. You could place a block between the hands to engage the shoulders. You could do some twisting. Great way to build up the core strength, because you have to keep engaged. You can hold it for any amount of time. The stronger the core, the longer you can hold on there. It's just a good one. I like both those. Different variations of supine twists. So twists when you're on your back. Try not to let the shoulder of the opposite side of the body than the legs lift away from the floor. I explained that well enough. So if your knees are coming to the right hand side, you want to try not to let the left shoulder blade lift too far away from the floor. To increase intensity, the knees are going to come closer to the body. To take some intensity off, the knees come away from the body. Legs do not have to touch. They don't have to touch the floor. You could place a block underneath. And it can be either side. When we do a supine twist, kicking a little bit deeper, we have one leg bent. Again, so my right leg is crossing the body. I want to try to keep my right shoulder blade close to the floor. In that single leg supine twist, keeping the core engaged, you're going to feel it a little bit more on the outside of the glute and the leg. You'll still feel it in the back, but if you keep your core disengaged and loose, you're going to feel that a little bit more in your lower back, because you're able to get into that twist just a little bit deeper. I try to convince people that it's a twisted ease, so they're not really just trying to crank their body open, but it happens and they inevitably just do what they want to do anyway. So you could take all kinds of twists. You could cross the legs. This is going to be a deeper variation. So if you're twisting to the left, the right leg crosses over the left. This is going to be deeper through the lower back, through the outside of your leg, your IT band. You could do an eagle leg variation where you bring your foot behind your calf and take it that way. It could be straight legs where you take your both long legs over to one side and the other. Another one of my favorites is the figure four. So if you have one ankle crossed over the opposite knee, the knee falls to the side and it takes the foot with it. Again, the closer your legs are to your body, the deeper the stretch. Taking it closer to the end of the mat, less of a stretch. It's okay if their shoulder blade comes off the floor a little bit, but if it comes off a whole lot, then they're taking away from their twist and they're basically just rolling onto their side. And that's taking away the purpose of the twist. Right, twists are really great for your back. They're great for your internal organs, a wringing out motion, so that as you unwind, fresh oxygenated blood rushes in, which is great for your internal organs. Figure four. So figure fours are a great way to stretch the glutes, gets up into your piriformis, which is a hard to reach muscle. Glutes, hamstrings, groin, overall just beautiful posture. I love it. You can do this while you're sitting in a chair, because really all you need to do is cross one ankle over your opposite thigh. So we can do that while we're seated. You would just cross the ankle over, bring the legs closer to the body. There doesn't have to be a certain degree. They don't have to be able to bring, their body or their leg up to touch their body or their body to touch the leg. If you're going to do it seated, you want to keep the back flat. You don't want to slump into that. Some people are just hell-bent on getting their chest to their leg. It doesn't have to, and it might be all the way out here. They have to guide it based on their body type, their shape, their tightness, even how the bones fit into bones, how the bone fits into the socket. I encourage not to lock out their elbows. Again, I don't hyperextend elbows and knees. Always make sure you hold it on the opposite sides for the same time. You don't want to do one side longer than the other because then they're just off balance. You can do this while you're reclined. I just showed you that one just a second ago. So this is a great one. Just pull the knees in. This is a great stretch. If you're on your reclined position, you can also lengthen the bottom leg. So you're lifting it up. You're getting the hamstring stretch in the long leg. You're getting the glute stretch in the bent leg. Another variation we have of that is your figure 4 chair pose. So ankle over knee, bending into that leg. You can bring both hands to the inside of the leg, but you want to make sure if you're pressing on your knee, you're also pressing on the ankle so you don't topple over. This can come down as deep as they want it to go. You can turn this into other postures if you're going to do like your flying pigeon. That would be the start of this. Your grasshopper. There's other things that you can do from this position. The most progressive figure 4 chair, and it takes away, I think, from the back of the leg stretch and turns it more into almost the quad and knee stretch, is to bring the opposite ankle up into the hip crease. So my left foot would go into my right hip crease, and you're turning the kneecap back down towards the floor. And you can do binds that way. In Ashtanga, that's one of the binds. So that's another variation of figure 4. I don't consider it to be, it doesn't feel the same. So you're not going to get the same benefits as if you have the shin forward. So just different ways that you can take a figure 4 stretch. Like I said, if you're sitting in a chair, if you've been in a car ride for a while, you're in an airplane, if you are, well, just wherever, if you're at work, it's a great way. Just to stretch out the legs, gets into the lower back, and of course up into that piriformis, which is a tight little muscle. All right. Hero pose I talked about when we talked about sitting on blocks. But, so hero pose, another variation of, instead of sitting on the heels, is to bring the tailbone down in between your heels. So the heels are on the outsides of the hips, and your tailbone is sitting on the floor. This is a tremendous stretch here for your quadriceps. It's a lot of pressure in the knees. I always have to roll my calf muscles out of the way to come down. You can come into a reclined. This would be half reclined hero. This would be your fully reclined hero pose. This is also going to arch your back significantly away from the floor. This is really intense. So I usually don't cue coming all the way down to the floor, and as a matter of fact, I usually cue it one leg at a time. So one leg is in that half pigeon, or the baby pigeon that I talked about, like that modified version of pigeon, and then I have the other leg off to the side. It's really important to keep the top of the foot flat against the floor. This is something else altogether, another way to work on your legs. But if you're going to do that hero pose, you want the top of the foot on the mat. If they have the inside of their ankle against the floor, their ankle is going to try to fold and bend in an unnatural way. And your ankle doesn't bend from side to side like that. That's not how the joint is designed. It goes up and down. So we want to work with the natural bend in the leg to facilitate that stretch. As they start to lean back, they want to keep pressing the shin towards the floor. If they start to lean back and they let their knee lift up, they're not going to get the stretch in that quadricep. It's going to certainly stretch their ankle and their feet, but they're not going to feel it here, the hero pose is a great way to get into your quadricep. And of course, you can do that same stretch while you're standing. It's not going to be as intense because you don't have the weight of your body on your leg. And you can also work on balance too as an added bonus there. Speaking of quadricep stretches, another way to access that stretch is from their side. So if someone is lying on their side with their knees bent, this is usually pretty accessible. They can just reach back for their top leg. Still getting some of the benefits of that hero's pose, still getting that quadricep stretch. It's just an easier, quoted too far. It's just an easier way to get that stretch. In forward fold, so I talked earlier about our Dandasana or staff pose. Feet are flexed, keeping the heels close to the floor. Encourage them not to try to hyperextend. They don't need to try to, fill that space between the knee pits and the floor. Try to keep the they don't hyperextend. They don't have to activate the quads and press them down towards the mat. Hinging first, so back is flat, chest forward first for as long as they can, and then they can round over the legs. Some variations of that: peace fingers around big toes, pulling in. They can use a strap. They could reach down both hands to find, you know, their feet. They maybe are coming down onto their heels. My hamstrings are not stretched out, but there's nothing magical that happens if their forehead can touch their shin. Most people are like, just really want to get down there and touch their feet. It's just a great way to stretch out the hamstrings and the lower back. When you have the single leg forward fold, you have the foot of one leg against the thigh of the other. You want to try to keep pivoted towards the front, so you're still coming over that front leg. The front foot is flexed, the foot is in line with the hip, and you're hinging first and then rounding over the leg. I always tell them to keep their eyes on their shin, and they want to pull this way. Again, it doesn't matter, people are just really wanting to get down to touch their foot, but it's okay to stay all the way up here. Same thing, don't hyperextend the leg, don't try to shove the back of that leg down to the floor. A bent knee is your body's way of protecting that hamstring. It takes a long time to recover from hamstring injuries. Long time. So just take it nice and gentle on that. Again, you want to try to hold it the same amount of time on each side. That's for any posture. It's hard to keep track of time. I know I lose my sense of time sometimes, so I try to time it by breath. When we're in our Baddha Konasana, I think I said this, I can't remember, bowed angle. So the most intense is to bind the feet together, pull the heels in, and then press the knees down. It's a posture of intensity. So pulling the chest forward, squeezing the shoulder blades together, and if they hinge, it's not going to come down very far. So this is the most intense variation of that. If you want to take it a little less intense, the legs can come in front of the body a little bit. Hinging forward first and then rounding over the legs. This is a counter stretch to our straddle, to taking the legs out wide. This is a counter stretch to that. So we're talking about like the union of opposites, the yin versus the yang. This would be yin and yang. Not really like as far as how I explained it earlier in your yin classes, but this is the counter stretch. So if we did the right side, we do the left. If we do a forward fold, we might do a back bend. Twist to one side, you gotta twist to the other. So this is the counter stretch. You can take elbows inside of knees, you can bring the hands down, and you're just flat back first, then round. Just another way. It gets into your groin, it gets into your hips. My arms are quite a bit different color than my legs. So it wasn't even gonna add that. Those are just some more alignment cues for some common postures that we use in our yoga practice. I'm going to do another video for special populations soon that we're going to talk about some chair yoga. So some of these same postures you'll see are accessible from a chair for a population of maybe it could be for a million different reasons why they are using a chair. But that will be another video, and I will get to that soon, and I will see you all again very soon.